Hey everybody. It's been a while. I made my last video for my YouTube channel, but I never really posted it on Facebook. But I'll get around to that eventually, I guess. So I just got out of bed, feeling pretty groggy. I look like a mess, and I don't know why, but I decided to just sit down and make a random video. So the Biden apologists are going into full swing. Every single thing that every criticism they made, not just about Donald Trump and Brett Kavanaugh, but every criticism that they endorsed by establishment Democrats and their surrogates on MSNBC against Sinkwager, Al Franken, Bernie Sanders, and a host of other progressive, activist and Democratic fighters, because God knows they can't let Democrats actually care about fighting Republicans staying in office. They've turned their back on just their principles, on their supposed principles. Thus proving what basically giving truth to the lie that the alt right have been pushing for a while. That that liberals essentially co-opt the Me Too stuff. They use that as a way of bashing their opposition. Well, I can only say, thanks, guys. Thanks, guys. You basically made the Nazis the fucking truth tellers in this situation. I hope it was worth it. I hope defending Joe Biden, the other sexual assaulter in this race, is worth it. I really do. I hope it's worth everything you're doing. I mean, you've become these people have basically become the very thing they hate, and they don't even fucking realize it. And their only real response is to basically go out and accuse people who say they won't vote for Biden for this, among a million other reasons, to accuse them of being in dereliction of duty and all that shit, as if they fucking own our vote. I'm just like, no party owns your vote by default. You can't. You just. I'm sorry, but when your only real way of getting elected is to hide behind how bad the other guy is and use him as a threat, that's extortion. That's not running for office. No. Sorry. And you can't even make the whole Trump, and he's putting all these kids in cages stuff. You can't. Barack Obama himself was considered, his administration was considered a nightmare for immigrants' rights groups. He was called the deporter in chief. Yeah, and yes, kids were actually being put in cages then too, based on stuff that came to light. So it's like you can't even make that argument now. I mean, it's like people only started caring when there was a guy with an R after his name in office. That's where we're at now. I mean, people that we used to think were actually our allies in these battles have proven that they have no fucking that they have no principles whatsoever, and that it really was just a team sport for them. And these people, they've been, and it's like you can't really get them out of this mindset. It's like instead they're just they just want to blame everyone else because we're not gonna look the other way on their bullshit. They don't want to be policy shamed. They don't want to, but they don't want to be shamed for being a bunch of reprobate assholes who have essentially proven that they don't really believe a thing they say. They don't want to be held to the same standard that we hold all these retard right wing Republicans to. But it's like, yeah, I get it. Donald Trump is a piece of human shit, but getting behind a piece of human shit and then trying to rationalize being behind another piece of human shit, that's, I mean, I'd have more respect for these people if they were just upfront and honest and said, "Hey, we don't really believe that Biden is a good person. We're just doing it because we just didn't want to vote for Sanders or Gabbard or anyone in the primaries, because that would have proven that all of our safe choice talk from 2004 and 2016 was a bunch of bullshit, because we just didn't want to admit the young people were right." If they would just come out and admit that it was all about just personal vindication, that they wanted that they wanted an affirmation for their own bullshit life, uh, their own bullshit life philosophy, then I'd have a little bit more respect for them. Not much more, but I'd have just a little bit more for them. You know, but they've. I guess 2016, 2004, and 1988. All these years weren't enough for them. I guess losing 1,000 seats under Barack Obama at all levels of government, and then losing 1,000 more seats less than a generation before at all levels of government under Bill Clinton. I guess that just wasn't enough for these people. They don't want to fucking learn. They're they've they have no character development. They're a flat character at heart. They have no intention of trying anything different because they've basically been making excuses for these people for so damn long that they're just not gonna move on and try something different. They have a sunk cost fallacy. They've put so much emotional and mental energy into fighting against their fellow Democrats and finding newer and better ways to lose to the GOP, and not just their fellow Democrats, but independents, left-leaning independents, people. It just they act like they act as if they're entitled to something they never earned, and that's somehow hiding behind how bad the Republican is. You can only do that shit. The thing is, you can only use that campaign strategy so many times. You definitely can't use it 2 elections in a row and expect it to work. They haven't learned a damn thing from 2016, and they won't. Their only real response is Orange Man bad, Orange Man bad. Yeah, I get it. Donald Trump is a piece of shit. I should know. I spent the first 2.5 years of his presidency railing against him for that very reason. Because he is a piece of shit. But you don't get to complain about Donald Trump after effectively doing some of the same shit he's done, and nominating someone who is at least half as bad as he is. You don't get to make the argument of lesser of two evils this, or harm reduction, or oh well, we need to keep the Supreme Court. Dude, we've already lost the goddamn Supreme Court for the next 30 years. The Republicans have a majority on the Supreme Court, and they only need 10 years to basically get most of what they want from them. So to all these people who keep saying, "Oh well, we got to show up for the courts, the courts, the courts." 1 out of 16 of lower court appointees are Trump appointees now. Okay, yeah, 1 out of 16 lower court justices are Trump appointees, because Barack Obama would not take advantage of an existing legal precedent that would have allowed him to appoint judges in the event that the Senate wouldn't do their job, which the Republican Senate wouldn't. And as a constitutional scholar, Barack Obama should have known about this. He probably did, and he just didn't fucking do it because he thought that hiding behind how bad Republicans were was enough. Sorry, acid reflux was enough to keep from having to pony up on these things. Instead of blaming Bernie supporters and left wing voters and left leaning independents and Green Party members, and instead of blaming all of us for not voting for your decadent party, maybe you shouldn't have nominated a piece of shit. Maybe you shouldn't have gotten behind a piece of shit at the recommendation of another guy who was a complete and utter failure in the face of Republican opposition. Don't blame us because you assholes didn't want to fucking change. Don't blame us because you wanted to basically take Barack Obama at his word. I spent the first 2 years of Barack Obama's presidency protecting this guy from right wing attacks, because like most of you, I voted for him. But after the first 2 years and the lack of the lack of progress that the fucker made, despite having both houses of Congress behind him, I was done with it. I mean, if they were going to allow Republicans to shut down the government, despite the fact that Republicans were in no real position to do so. And if Barack Obama wasn't going to try to use any kind of arm twisting or even threaten sitting Democrats with primary challenges if they didn't fall in line, if he wasn't going to use every what method is at his disposal to fix the problems caused by the Bush administration, and you can't even say you can't even really make an argument for Nancy Pelosi at this point because that whole it was bad enough during the last 2 years of the Bush administration when she basically did dick all while being Speaker of the House. We had both houses of Congress then, albeit by a slim margin in the Senate, and there could have been one moment. There could have been so much to take Republicans to task, but because so many of these Democrats happened to be the sort that voted for the Iraq War, they were so fucking just they just absolutely would not respond to the will of the voters. I mean, it's like they convinced themselves that their victory over the Republican Party in 2006 came out of a fucking vacuum. But these people who keep on trying to act as apologists for Biden, it's like they don't really have any expectations of their party. They just don't. They don't care about standards. And it's like everything they're doing now is just a reaction to the rest of us trying to hold them to a higher standard. They're just like Republicans. They're whiny little bitches. They're like Trump supporters, a bunch of whiny little bitches who are trying to make excuses for their particular dear leader just because it has the stamp of approval of the party's leadership, the very party leadership that allowed them to clamp down on all us kids and put us in our place. You think that shit's gonna work forever? All these old fucks who voted for Biden in the primaries, they gotta die of old age sometime. Then what you assholes gonna do, huh? And the thing is, you can't reasonably expect many of us to come back to the Democratic Party again after this. 2020 was your last chance to show that you were willing to do the right thing, not just the right thing in a superficial sense, by preventing Donald Trump from having a second term. No. That you were willing to get behind actual generational change. And by generational change, I mean generational change that had economic populism for younger people at its center. People want to bitch and moan. They want to talk about how they wouldn't turn out. Oh look, why are you bitching? You Bernie supporters bitching. Hey. Turnout in the 2018 election was up 80% among millennials. When people saw what happened in Iowa, people threw their hands up and said, "Hey!" And I remember when that shit was going down. I remember all the comments that were being made by folks in my own age group. They gave up. They gave up because they realized that the fix was in. Folks just stayed home after that. And now you want people to show up after you look the other way and refuse to hold Tom Perez, Barney Frank, and the rest of them, Pete Buttigieg, you refuse to hold them all accountable. They marginalized our vote, and they've used COVID-19 as a means of voter suppression, just like Republicans have in Wisconsin. They've used it in places like New York now with in their bid to cancel in canceling the New York Democratic presidential primaries. And they only did that because they're trying to suppress turnout for progressive primary challengers against sitting centrist Democrats. And they knew that if Bernie Sanders showed up, if Bernie Sanders supporters wanted to vote, it would increase turnout for these other down ticket races. So I don't want to hear another damn thing from these people, but I know I'm going to hear it anyway. So it's like they don't learn. They're just as fucking stupid as Trump supporters. They're not going to learn. They're going to keep on making the same mistake, and they're going to keep justifying it by saying this person or that person is not electable just because some surrogate on MSNBC told them, and they don't want to admit that their only reason for saying it, for believing that, is because somebody else told them, and they put too much fucking trust in the elites. They don't want to admit that they have the same fucking problem as Trump supporters. You can't fix stupid. Yeah, I said it. They're fucking stupid. They bitch and moan about progressives not respecting their intelligence, but my response to that is, if you want us to respect your intelligence, actually show some fucking intelligence. You know, here I am. I'm incoherent as fuck. I mumble, stumble like a jerk dick, but I still come across as more coherent in my arguments for why we shouldn't vote for either major party candidate in the 2020 election than you assholes, than many of these assholes do when they start talking all this shit about how, oh, it's about harm reduction. Oh, it's the lesser. You can't even make the lesser of two evils argument in this case, because Biden is so much worse than Hillary. He's so much worse as a component of the establishment than Hillary Clinton is. Which I never thought the Democrats could find someone who was weaker than her as a candidate, but lo and behold, the old saying is true. Democrats, if they can, they will find a way to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, and they have once again done it. They chose the one person who had no fucking empathy, and has even stated he has no empathy for young people. And his only concession that he's willing to give to us to get us to the polls is to lower the age of Medicaid to, like, what, 60? Most of us aren't going to live long enough to collect it anyway. And that ploy, lowering it to 60, that was more about that was more about just making it where the most expensive people would be thrown off on Medicare, so that the insurance companies wouldn't have to look for them. It was a giveaway to them more than anything else. It was about getting rid of their most expensive customer base, so that they could retain more of their own profits. So I'm just like, guys, you've lost this election, whether you realize it or not. All these Biden supporters, they need to just get it through your heads. You assholes have lost this election. You've delivered this a second term to Donald Trump, not just because of the fact that we're not going to vote for Biden after all the shitty ways, after all the shitty shenanigans that the DNC and establishment figures and the state parties went through to insulate this guy, to protect him, to keep him from going down in flames, despite him basically having absolutely no real support outside of people who are like, yeah, he's Obama's former VP. Nobody liked Biden before he was a fucking VP of Barack Obama. I can go back and look at some of the fucking comments from years ago from these people who would not vote for Biden in the Democratic primaries back in the day. The fucker lost the primaries like what, 3-4 times. He never got more than 5% of the delegates in any of his past attempts at trying to run for president. The only reason this guy is even being given a free pass by many of these normie Democrat types is because Barack Obama, being his VP, basically gave him a makeover, a public makeover, one that he didn't deserve. I mean, the guy's been a shill for the credit card industry and the banking industry his whole life. He co-authored the bankruptcy law changes that made it where the rest of us couldn't file for bankruptcy. Of course, making it keeping it where rich people could use bankruptcy as a way of getting out of trouble. But you want to basically get behind a Bush Republican. You want to shame us into getting behind what is essentially a neocon. Fuck you. You didn't just learn nothing from 2016. You learned nothing. You fuckers that vote that support Biden, that are trying to ram him down our throats and trying to shame us into voting for him. You learned nothing from 2004. You've learned nothing from the 1990s. You learned nothing from 2010. You learned nothing. You're as stupid as your Trump supporting rivals are, and your only reason for hating them is because they're keeping you from having a monopoly on being willfully fucking stupid. It's not as much about racism or anything. You guys, it's not about social justice to you people, because you had your chance to prove that you cared about that. You had your chance to prove that you actually cared about Me Too and women and everything, but instead you co-opted it, and you let people co-opt it. At best, you let people co-opt it who didn't even care, and at worst, you never cared, and you were just in on using it as a way of fighting against your own opposition. You have no principles, none whatsoever. You have no place telling the rest of us how to vote, and you have no place telling the rest of us that we have to stay with the Democratic Party. It ain't dividing the left. It's not dividing the left. Us leaving the Democratic Party is not dividing the left if you fuckers were never left wing to begin with. There is no dividing the left when most of you are not even leftist. Liberals are not leftist. Centrists are not leftist, and we on the left who self-identify as anarcho-communists, democratic socialists, social democrats, uh, progressives. We on the left, we need to just go ahead and move on to greener pastures, and I do mean actual greener pastures, because the Green Party, they're courting us for hard right now, and they seem a lot more receptive to allowing us to have an actual fucking party for ourselves, where we can have the chance of building some real representation at the local and state level. They're actually giving us this out. And if not the Green Party, then there are at least two or three other third parties that are giving us more attention and are courting us more heavily than Democrats ever have. These last 3 or 4 election cycles, 2018 included, they're living proof that and historical proof that the Democratic Party will fight harder against the progressive movement than they will against Republicans. We owe these people nothing. We owe these people nothing. They had their chance to prove that they cared about our vote. They had their chance to prove that they cared about our input. They had their chance to prove they learned something from the last 3 or 4 presidential election cycles. They had their chance to prove that they learned that we should be treated as equal partners within the Democratic Party, and that they shouldn't let their own leadership put their fingers on the scales against us. They had their chance to learn all of these lessons, and they refused. What do they do? What do they do every time a Democrat, somebody with a D after their name, gets into office? They go to sleep. They stop caring. They just stop caring. They don't pay attention to what's going on in the world. And it's that kind of bullshit that leads the rest of us that leads the rest of us down a very horrible path as a country. So, and the thing is, I'm not even the right person to be making this criticism, because I don't really pay that much attention to politics in my own local area. I pay attention to state level politics and national level politics, but it's I'm not in the perfect position to make this criticism, but I'm going to do it anyway because it needs to be said. These people, they don't pay attention. They're not really activists so much as they're reactionaries in the same vein as the Republicans, albeit for a different side. So yeah, this year is going to be a bloodbath for the Democrats. Yeah, the polls might go up and down and everything, but there are going to be a lot of disappointed shit libs and normie Democrats come November. A lot of disappointed people, and they'll have no one to blame but their own damn selves. You don't give the youngest generations in America the finger. Tell us to suck it up after essentially spending your whole lives twisting the tax code to benefit yourselves at the expense of everyone else, and then turn around and expect us to just look the other way in the name of party unity when there was never really any unity to begin with. But they're going to find this out the hard way. They're going to find out the hard way that they should have been more consistent in their principles. They're going to find out the hard way that hiding behind how bad Republicans are by comparison doesn't work when you've done it so often that it becomes like the whole boy who cried wolf thing. So you know, no, I take that back. They won't learn. They won't learn. I don't even know why I'm saying that. They won't learn. They're not even the hard way. The hard way doesn't mean shit to these people because they have enough economic privilege that they will never come to this point. They will never reach that point because they're insulated from the realities of what they're doing. They never wind, or at least they seldom wind up being in the blast radius of their own voting habits. So, that's all I got to say on that.